Well, welcome to the West Sports Show, and I am joined by colleague Craig O'Donoghue. How are you, Cod?
Good, Quarters. It was a big weekend of footy, wasn't it?
It was. Origin very successfully reinvented. But you were down in Bunbury watching Freo play in an intraclub game, which is what we're going to focus on largely in this podcast, particularly the performance of someone who we shouldn't be surprised, really. His name's Murphy Reid, won the Rising Star last year, joined Sirioli for goal assists and goals kicked in a season. Remarkable talent, we know that. But from what you've seen, early evidence, we can expect another special year from this kid.
He was remarkable in Bunbury, like dead set remarkable. So there's no vision of the game. It wasn't recorded, it wasn't streamed or anything like that. If there was vision of the game, Fremantle fans would be doing cartwheels right now because he was absolutely dominant. He was playing in a team that was 5 goals down at quarter time because they didn't have a ruckman. It was Mason Cox for the opposition team and it was versus a waffle ruckman. And Mason Cox just made sure they just kept winning centre clearances. Murphy Reid just turned around and said, nah, this isn't going to happen anymore. He had 10 possessions in the second quarter. He finished the game with 32 disposals. And he set up 5 goals. So we talk about goal assists. He genuinely set up half their score with the way that he was able to use the ball. And I just kept on going, oh my God, look what he did there and look what he did there. And when you're driving back from Bunbury and you're going, I remember more than half of his disposals and what he did with them. And that made me just go, oh wow, that make you just write something down.
This was pretty rare last season in his debut year for him to mess around. I mean, I can't recall really any time he had the footy in his hands when he didn't make the right decision. There might have been some forced errors through a tackle or through a player disrupting his rhythm, but he makes good choices, and there's the conundrum because he is so useful in that forward 50. But we've seen now he's getting more midfield minutes. So what's he going to be? Because this is a midfield that's been building for some time. We know Sarong, we know Brayshaw, we know Hayden Young are going to be in there. So Murphy Reid, what sort of percentage of time are we going to forecast? Is he a 60-40, as in 60 forward, 40 midfield? That's what I'd lean to, I think.
Yeah, I think his performance on the weekend would have made all of the coaches go, oh, we need to reassess what he's going to be because we know that.
Do you reckon they wouldn't have known already? Do you reckon?
They would have liked to have seen it in a real game in pressure, and they'll want to see it again this week against West Coast and then again against Adelaide. But last year, he only had 5 centre bounces the entire season. They were very heavy with Sarong having 535 and Brayshaw having 507, and then it dropped right back with Shea Bolton having 242, Hayden Young missing most of the year, only had 103. But what we'll see now is Reid will go in there a lot more, and I think it will be on performance. If he plays like he did on the weekend, they can't not have him in the middle. And Luke Jackson.
Well, we haven't mentioned him yet. Yeah. So saw him get mainly midfield minutes, not as a ruckman for the WA team in Origin. It's where he spent the bulk of the summer. So we're expecting, particularly with Mason Cox's arrival now, partnering Sean Darcy, we're expecting Luke Jackson to play more as a mid. So again, they have got riches now, Fremantle, and I think someone like a Murphy Reid, where the time and space is quite special, and someone like Luke Jackson with his size, I think there's a couple of points of difference now for this midfield, which we haven't seen in the past.
Yeah, so it's always been who's numbers 4, 5, and 6 has been the question. So last year with Shea Bolton, it would have been so number 1, 2, and 3 being the big 3, and Sarong, Brayshaw, and Young. And then you got Bolton, who was moving into that as well, and Fife was in there when he was available. And then you had O'Meara and Johnson and Erasmus all sort of battling amongst each other, along with Corey Wagner. I think, based on what I've seen this summer, the new 4 and 5 is now Jackson and Murphy Reid. I think Shea Bolton could be the 6, or he could be the permanent forward to create more havoc down that way.
I reckon in case of emergency break glass with Bolton, I reckon he stays forward more often than not, and I think they've got their mix now. I think you're right.
Yeah, and Erasmus was the next best mid on the day down in Bunbury. So we've seen how he grew throughout the back of last year above probably O'Driscoll in that department. Johnson got hurt, so we didn't see enough of him in the second half of that last year. But we're talking about those 3 guys who are all fighting, because it feels like Wagner they like because of his versatility. But Murphy Reid in the middle, I think, is just going to be so important. And it comes down to what he does with the footy. So I interviewed him in Bunbury and he said, I don't want to waste the ball ever. It's one thing to get the ball. It's one thing to have numbers. It's another thing to actually use it really, really well. And you mentioned Cyril. Cyril never wasted the footy, did he?
No.
And we just saw an Origin game where Victoria didn't waste the ball ever.
No. And a couple of training sessions where it did not hit the ground.
Yeah, so Caleb Strong's focusing really hard this summer on becoming more of an impact player rather than a possession player, and we saw that in Origin. He's used to the footy. Hayden Young's always been an impact player with his disposals, and Andrew Brayshaw's been that pressure player who really works really, really hard. And Jackson's going to be that big-bodied, bolt-bullocking guy. So if they can add a Murphy Reid in there who just makes the ball sing and makes other players look better, it will change so much to do with their midfield.
I recall talking to one of Murphy Reid's coaches after he was drafted. What was he picked? 14, 15?
16, I think
Which
it was
a steal because it was a draft where there were a lot of good players. So he was a bit of a slider, not because of ability. But the coach said to me, at every level of footy he'd played, from juniors up into the teens, to state 18s, to the VFL, every single step he'd made up, he'd risen. He'd bridged the gap straight away. And he did exactly the same with the AFL. In the AFL, obviously you don't win the Rising Star if you're not a standout. So, but I'm not the only person who thinks that. Let's hear from Sam Switkowski.
To be honest, it still surprises me sometimes when he pulls a kick sideways without looking and things like that. He's a rare talent. Pretty special. But to be honest, I've been really impressed with just how hard he's worked over the preseason. He's built his body. Coming to your second year, guys can sway one way or the other, and some can get complacent if they've had a really good first year. But he's only just taking his game to another level, and with the physical stuff that he's worked on over preseason.
So if we look at what Switkowski was talking about in terms of just doing things, what made you go, oh, so this is his game, okay? These are the goals that he set up. Where in the second quarter, he chips the ball backwards from inside 50 to Tobin Murray, which sets up a set shot for goal, which Murray converts. So that gave them a bit of a steadier that they needed at that time. Third quarter, wins a clearance, passes the ball to Oscar McDonald, he kicks a goal. So he once again, first one is ground ball sort of situation inside 50. This is a genuine clearance situation. 2 minutes later, he stands under a high ball with an opponent just charging at him, cops a little bit of front-on contact, doesn't flinch, marks the ball, straight away play on bullet pass over the fingertips of a defender onto Hayden Young, who takes a mark, set shot, goal. 3 minutes after that, centre clearance, finds some space, handball over his shoulder, which would have gone 15 metres, onto the chest of Tobin Murray. Onto the chest of Matt Johnson, who passes to Tobin Murray. There's another goal. And then in the last quarter, great pass to Josh Tracy, who missed from 50, follows up again, hits Tracy again. There's another goal. So there's 5 goals, all from different sorts of disposals, by hands, by feet. And then he has 2 holding the ball tackles during that quarter as well. So he's doing everything. He's tackling, he's winning clearances, he's hitting targets inside 50, he's showing courage, he's opening up the game. What he can do is so unique.
And he'll want to play midfield, won't he? Because every kid wants to play midfield. By the way, Switkowski's no slouch either. He's another one of those players, in my opinion, who, when he gets the footy inside 50 or near into the 50-metre arc, you always think they're going to score.
Yes. Because
he's a very clever player. So for him to say that is some praise indeed. Who did you see in the game of the newcomers who you think might be a chance to break in, at least in the first third of the season?
Yeah, so based purely on their depth at the moment, it's going to be hard for any of them to get in.
Attrition, injuries, etc.
So Tobin Murray kicked a couple of goals, and I've talked about him on previous podcasts. So he made the most of his opportunities across half forward. So that was a promising sign for him.
So tell our listeners, so what size is he? What sort of...
He's around the low 180s, I think it works out to. He's a 20-year-old, so he's played VFL footy. He's calm, he's composed, he's skilled. He uses the ball really well and doesn't look out of place. So he's the one who I think is at the top of the pecking order for those forwards who have come in.
Ahead of Sam Sturt even, who is coming back from injury?
Well, he's not going to play until July.
Okay.
So he's a long way. I'm talking about the guys who were drafted last year. The guys who were drafted last year, they went and got Tobin Murray. Their first pick was Adam Swade, and they brought in Leon Kickett as well as a forward. So they've got 3 forwards in that mix who have come into the team. And then there's Chris Sherry, who we're expecting to be added to the list under the SSP rules because he's been with them for the entire pre-season. and we expect that to happen soon. So I'd have Murray at the top of that list at the moment. Leon Kickett's been electrifying when he's got the ball, so he's really, really impressed.
He has looked good.
Yeah, and he kicked a goal as well. Adam Sway's still working his way through. Missed a bit of training at the start of the preseason. I missed a few targets on the weekend as well, and he would have liked to have really hit those where a bloke's out in space and the ball just landed at their feet or just went over the top. Did a couple of nice things as the game progressed, but I think he's still got a bit of work to do to really settle himself down. And then Sherry, I think we'll get on the list in a couple of weeks' time, and it's been impressive.
Cod, the game footy tipping is back for 2026. By the way, I picked the Victorian Origin team by 24 points. I got it bang on. The game footy tipping is back for 2026. Sign up by February 22 and you'll automatically enter the draw to win $10,000 thanks to Thirsty Camel. That's $10,000 in your pocket before the season has even started. Join today at thegame.com.au. We were talking about the midfield and Murphy Reid. Let's talk about the wings because to me, I think forward line relatively settled. Back line we know is relatively settled. They're starting to even build on that midfield. But the wings, no one has really planted a stake in the ground and said, this is mine. We've seen Jeremy Sharp at times. We've seen Nathan O'Driscoll at times. I think Jager's probably more likely to find himself out there. What have you seen so far? Who's going to be playing wings this year?
Jeremy Sharp was really good. So but he wasn't just a wingman. He was also in the centre square. But he was the one who put his hand up and said, look at me. Make me be someone you'd consider. And a lot of people who from Fremantle who weren't at the game because of Origin commitments were talking about what they'd heard about him afterwards. So that they were all like, we heard that Sharp did plenty and we heard Reid did heaps. That was an interesting thing that the feedback got back to them about how Sharp played.
How is his kicking? Because the slide on him, it's always been the rap for Jeremy Sharp, runs more than anyone. He gut runs. He does the selfless things for his team. Kicking's always been the issue with Jeremy Sharp.
Yeah, and it didn't stand out as being an issue in that game at all, but it was just more, he won a lot of the footy inside, which meant that you don't notice it as much if he does have a ball kick because he's under pressure when the ball comes out. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes if he goes back to a wing situation. They played Corey Wagner on the wing at different points. They played Brandon Walker on a wing at different points. Nathan O'Driscoll, Toby Wan.
Great name.
It is a great name. Toby Wan Kenobi has been really impressive with a big left foot throughout the preseason as a first-year player. So those guys have all been going through the wing. I would expect you're looking at Matt Johnson, Nathan O'Driscoll, Jago O'Meara, Corey Wagner as the four guys who are probably battling for those wing positions with the other guys coming up afterwards.
Forward line, how's it shaping up?
So this was the really interesting thing. We know what to expect from Josh Tracy and Pat Voss and Jai Amos, and they're all on different teams and stuff, so that does change things. Pat Voss almost killed Ollie Murphy. Young kid, third-year player.
Running with the flight of the footy.
No. Ollie Murphy was sitting under a high ball, and the best way I can describe it, I know you don't like wrestling, but if you like wrestling, think of Bron Breakker charging down towards the ring and just spearing someone. He just ran from 15 metres away and just launched himself horizontally at this poor kid who wasn't prepared for it.
Well, you're going to have to be at AFL level, but
Murphy didn't move, right? He's just laying on the ground and left the game and came back during the third quarter. But he looked around. It was like everyone looked around and went, what the hell was that? A tornado just came through and destroyed him. And Voss didn't show any remorse. He was like, you're an opposition player today, and just tried it back to his position. It was like a fast bowler who hit someone in their head.
You train as you play. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
What was the general feedback from it? Once they realised Ollie was okay, was it well, that's how we go about it?
I think that's been their attitude all pre-season, go hard or go home. So those three forwards are always going to be the ones that they're going to be looking to throughout the season.
What about Amos? Is he going to play higher?
That appears to be the feeling that he will play higher. It will come down to a fair bit of where Jackson ends up, where Cox ends up. Do they go taller or do they go smaller? They've got some things still to work out about that, which we'll find out over the coming days with all of the games. But it was the thing that stood out to me more than anything was that Young was a forward at times. He was the Dustin Martin role. Yep. So he'd play.
But he's done that a bit in pre-season, so clearly they're going to rotate with him high.
Yeah, so he would start in the midfield and then he'd just dart forward all of a sudden. He kicked 2 goals from marks. He missed another shot for goal from a mark as well. So he's taken 3 marks inside 50, 1 leading up at the ball, 1 just sort of standing still inside 50 by himself. And you go, okay, so he's deliberately getting forward to try to create a mismatch. which was when Murphy Reid was staying in the midfield rather than being a forward himself. Andrew Brayshaw kicked 2 goals, one as well. Caleb Sarong kicked a goal during Origin. So those guys are making a concerted effort to get forward and be more of a presence there as well. So you're not only looking at the guys who we know are forwards, we're looking at midfielders who have a genuine desire to be goal kickers. And that's what makes, if you got those guys, you know how important those guys are.
Once again, a point of difference. So we're talking about Jackson, we're talking about Murphy Reid. Now we're talking about Hayden Young perhaps rotating up there as a deep forward, which he's done a lot this preseason. So all points of difference, that can be the difference between a narrow loss or a narrow win.
Yeah, and the person kicking the ball inside 50 is so important, and they need to have those players. And this is where we get back to Murphy Reid again. So last year, Murphy Reid had 132 score involvements for the season, which ranked him 57th in the league. So I think that 132 is the number that he had for the year. Cozzy Pickett had 138, slightly more than Murphy Reid. Zach Merritt had 135. Harry Sheasel, who we all rate as a really important player for North Melbourne, had 124. And Levi Ashcroft, who was an early draft pick for Brisbane and played in the Premiership, has 105. And is the same age as Murphy Reid played for the Sandringham Dragons together. The previous year, Nick Watson was the best draftee for the whole year for the score involvements, and he was ranked 133rd in the league. Murphy Reid was number 57 last year. So his ability to change games and make other players better, as we said, is why he needs to be a bit further up the field so that he can win the ball, do some dancing with his feet, open the game up with his hands, and then change the game with his feet. He is just going to do some amazing things this year if he gets enough opportunities to be that player in the midfield.
Anything different defensively?
Judd McVie was obviously there. He didn't do a lot.
Obviously, Jordan was on state duty, so we haven't seen them together yet as such. We possibly get the chance this week.
Yeah, so it'll be important when we eventually do so that there were a lot of waffle players out there as well that were filling up the numbers. So at times they would have been standing in the wrong spot, and it broke down at times their ability to bring the ball out of the back line. So they didn't get the run that they necessarily would have wanted. And that's hard when you've got top-up players who are filling spots. They weren't as quick out of the back line as what I was expecting them to be. We've heard all summer that they're going to be quicker. Luke Ryan had a hell of a lot of the footy as they worked through from really deep in the back line. So it does look like they're still going to be quite composed and not reckless with the footy if they win possession in the back pocket. And it's more that if they intercept the ball on the halfback flank, that's when they're going to go. And they didn't have a lot of those intercepts that were right on the halfback flank. They were in a weird position where they did intercept it. But I think that also had a little bit to do with the fact that Hands Oval is the biggest ground possibly in the world.
And windy.
Yeah. It's just so big, though. Yeah. Like, where the ball lands isn't where it's going to land at Optus Stadium or at the SCG or Marvel Stadium. So that can be challenging for them to figure out as well. But, yeah, it wasn't really the massive attacking runs off halfback, which we've been seeing at training. So I'll be curious to see what happens this week when they play against West Coast.
The AFC Women's Asian Cup Australia 2026 kicks off right here in Perth when the Matildas take on the Philippines on Sunday, March 1. Take your family from $95. That's for 2 adults and 2 kids. See 12 of the best women's football teams from Asia compete as Perth plays host to 10 games, including Asia's top-seeded team, Japan. Plus, see the top talent from India, Vietnam, Chinese Taipei, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan. Get your tickets to Dream now at Ticketmaster. Cod, do you have Mason Cox in round 1?
Not just yet.
Okay.
I still think at the moment Luke Jackson will be the starting ruckman in round 1. And then he'll become a midfielder. I think wouldn't be surprised if Sean Darcy's still available by that point.
You don't think he'll be available?
I think Sean Darcy will be available.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think to start the year, I think there'll be a bit of experimentation that will go on still. And I think it'll be Jackson as the main ruckman because you're going to have Amos, Voss and Tracy as your forwards. They'll still be looking at Murphy Reid. They'll still be looking at other players in the midfield. So I think he's still the best chance to be the main ruck because Darcy doesn't play full games. When Darcy comes off the bench, he becomes a midfielder. I think Cox has to be a bit patient. But he's done everything right, Cox, over summer. And when they work out what they actually want to do with Jackson and the season progresses, I think it could be Cox and Darcy being the ruckman for the rest of the year and Jackson being a mid. But when you don't want to experiment too much against Geelong and Geelong.
No, you don't. We know what happened there last year. But
yeah.
I think Cox.
Have you liked Cox? Did you like the idea of him?
I think he's a fantastic addition. You didn't pay a lot to get him.
No.
I think he is perfect for where they're at. Not only on the field, but I think off the field, because people will tell you, I've not met Mason Cox, but people will tell you one of the great humans. But his contribution, maybe very experienced, but I just like what they're doing with Luke Jackson, and I think it's perfect for them. And not just his depth, I think he will be a really important player to them on the field this season. So I'm a yes, my hand's in the air.
The other thing that I think we need to, and they need to assess, is what the game actually looks like. So we didn't get a genuine look at what footy will be during Origin because of the ridiculous skill of the two teams.
Yes.
But there were no stoppages.
No.
The ball barely went out of bounds.
No stoppages, not much last touch.
No.
There
weren't ball ups.
No.
So was that because of the skill of the players?
Yes.
I think it was.
It was because of it was always going to be a less stoppage game.
Yeah.
And more free-flowing.
So how many stoppages are there going to be around the ground will dictate whether they are a Mason Cox, Sean Darcy, Luke Jackson team, or whether they are just Jackson and Darcy or Jackson and Cox or however it works, because you can't carry an extra ruckman if there aren't enough stoppages to warrant it. So we'll see.
There will be more stoppages.
There'll be more stoppages
you
in
will
Origin.
be able to carry another ruckman. I think so. I think that will be answered. I think that's an outlier, that game. As good as it was, that's not how footy will be played this year.
But where it falls in terms of, so that it's not going to be the ridiculous lack of stoppages from that game, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the numbers that we saw in the AFL Grand Final last year either. So how it falls in between when you've got the stand rule saying you can't back off to create congestion, because that's what that did. Everyone dropped off 5 metres, the ball was kicked long in, then we had another stoppage, then we had another stoppage. If those numbers decrease dramatically, then you might be looking into going, we don't need that extra ruck because Jackson can do some ruck work and then he can bugger off and be a midfielder. Pat Voss and Oscar McDonald both rucked at different points over the weekend as well in the centre square. They've got a lot of big guys. So do they need to be as big as what they would be with those blokes in it? Or is it important for that 23rd player to be a bit smaller?
Can I just issue a plea to the AFL? Can you stop now? I mean, we don't need the game to be any quicker. I think we've proven our point. We've got there. The game, we still need a little bit of, we still need some stoppage. We still need some attrition.
Hamstrings didn't handle it the other day.
No, they didn't. So please, that's enough. I think we've got to where we want to be. And it was really interesting talking to Patrick Dangerfield after the game. He forgot completely that there was no longer a bounce.
Yeah.
He said the first ball up, he said, oh, that's right. He was a bit taken aback by it. He wasn't expecting it. He said it'll be really interesting to see how players try and milk the last touch. Now, we know that umpires will be instructed. I mean, if there's it should be last clear disposal.
Which is what it is, yes.
It is what it is, but players will try and milk that. So that's going to be really interesting. We didn't get a lot of evidence of it at the weekend, but I think that was what Dangerfield suggested may happen. So, yeah, I think...
So you're talking about, there was a scenario where the ball ricocheted off a leg.
You deliberately whack it on a player's foot. Just try and disguise it and make it look like it's a clear disposal last touch, but it's not.
So that's an interesting question, because if I hand pass the ball into I'm a defender, I hand pass the ball into your leg as a forward and it goes through for a goal, that's a goal.
Yep.
If I'm a defender and I hand pass the ball into your leg and it ricochets out of bounds in the full, it's out of bounds in the full.
Yes, that's right.
So therefore, if I hand pass the ball into your leg and it goes out of bounds,
it should be a throw in.
No, because we can't have a rule for if it's handballed into your leg, it's a kick if it's a goal. If it's handballed into your leg and it goes out of bounds in the full, it's a kick. But if I hand pass into your leg and it rolls over, then it's not. That'll create chaos.
I think the intent of this rule is it to clearly be last
disposal,
last disposal, and not for it to be rebounded off your leg. That's the intent of the rule. So I just think it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Make no mistake, first 5-6 rounds, fans will be in uproar with all these rule changes, but they'll get used to it. Players will get used to it. Umpires will get used to it, and we roll on. I just think let's just stop it here, shall we?
I'll be really curious. The one rule I want to see how it changes, and this will impact Freo dramatically, is the centre bounce.
Yep.
The lack of the centre bounce.
Yep.
It's now being thrown up, as we said, and you can't cross that centre line until you're engaging with the ball.
Which really suits Luke Jackson.
Yes, unless you're jumping at the ball. So Sean Darcy can't step across the line and put his hand out to block, but Luke Jackson can cross the line in the air if he's jumping at the ball. So you have to jump at the ball. Mason Cox is really, really tall. Sean Darcy is a standstill wrestle ruckman, and he will be going up against other ruckmen who also are that type of player. And Luke Jackson is just the leaping athletic guy.
Yeah, don't forget there'll still be stoppages.
Yes.
So there will be a need for the wrestling ruckman still around the ground.
But if it becomes a case that the athletic ruckmen are all dominating the centre square, then suddenly Jackson can't be a midfielder. He has to be the athletic ruckman who jumps.
Well, he could be, yes.
Yeah. So that will dictate what he becomes as well, because there's probably half a dozen who are the wrestling guys. There's probably half a dozen who are going to be the leaping guys, and then there's another half dozen who are just tall. So, and they're sort of in between. So which type of player dominates? We've seen how much St Kilda have paid for De Koning. If that's sort of a ruckman and Luke Jackson sort of ruckman.
It would clearly suit him.
Yeah. If these guys become the ones who are important, then that totally changes how Luke Jackson will be used.
Can't wait for it, Cod. Thanks for your time.
Good to see. We'll look forward to seeing West Coast and Fremantle taking each other on down at the Dockers headquarters this Saturday morning, and we'll get vastly more information again about what footy's going to look like in 2026.
We'll talk to you about it next week. For more, head to thewest.com.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music.